going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core picks for this week's PGA Championship. Obviously, it's a major championship season. We're expecting conditions to be relatively difficult. We've got Southern Hills, an absolute gem of a golf course, to be the home for these players these weeks, and in general, really looking forward to it. And last week at the Byron Nelson, a birdie fest that we ended up doing pretty well on ourselves. Really, first off, gives us the bankroll for this week, but also a little bit of excitement. It's not going to be nearly the same birdie fest or the scoring that we saw down in McKinney, Texas, but at the same time, we get the world's best teeing it up here in Oklahoma, and a lot to look forward to. So in this video, going to be covering my top 6 plays for this week, one in each price range, to give you an idea of some of my foundational plays I'll be using in my DFS lineups. Of course, I'm looking at it right around 20, maybe even 25% plus exposure to all of these players, particularly the guys up top where it's closer to 35, maybe even 40% in terms of my personal player pool. So, you know, if they're going to be a key part of my lineups, they're guys that I believe in. So let's go ahead and hop right on into it. All right, on the screen, you can see our projections. As per usual, you can access these on my Patreon page, but got to start it off with a review of the golf course, which if you haven't already seen my course breakdown, I highly recommend it, especially so this week, given that it's a brand new venue, one we haven't seen since 2007, but this is a little bit of a different major track. It's difficult, right? It's got the fast undulating greens that you'd expect at most tracks, but it's a par 70, 7,500 yards, and there's not really those bomb and gouge type of holes. It's more positional. There's a ton of dog legs. The rough here, while it's only 2¼ inches at this point, will grow out to 3.5 inches by the end of the week, and you're going to have to keep it in the short stuff. So rather than it being more of an overpowered golf course where we're looking for guys like a Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka year in and year out, it's going to be more about your traditionalist, right? Somebody that's a little bit more well-rounded in all the shots gained categories. That's why approach, while it is still the most important stat, isn't like it's extra important this week. It's right around where I usually have it, right around 30%. Off the tee is actually a little bit more emphasis on accuracy over distance this week, whereas in weeks past, it'd probably be like a 15-10 split for distance over accuracy. With putting, taking a look at bent grass splits, of course, these are pure distinction bent grass surfaces. Some recent form with the putter, also a player's baseline. Around the green, about 3 times more important this week than it is most weeks. Par 4 scoring with the extra 2 par 4s. Also some shots gained at major championships and 3 putt avoidance. All that adds up to a golf course where you pretty much have to be good at everything, and you got to go out there and hit some fairways, hit some greens, keep yourself out of trouble. And par, even a 1-over round, is probably going to gain you spots on the leaderboard. I expect a scoring average close to maybe 72.5, even 73 day in and day out at Southern Hills. This is a challenging test pretty much across the board. I mean, with the rough, some of the penalty areas off the tee, the green's relatively small, right around 5,000 square foot per green. Around the green, you have raised surfaces that also, again, a lot of undulation, a lot of speed to them. That's difficult. And the putting, for the same reason is also difficult. So you're dealing with a test across the board, which is why a lot of these plays will be well-rounded. First off, at the top of the board, we have Colin Morikawa, who might not be the best putter, but if we take a look at his recent stats, particularly over the last 50 measured rounds, at that point, it's a relatively large sample size. You'll see that his first off short game and his putting has been right around a neutral. And in the past, he has been leaking, even hemorrhaging strokes in both categories, particularly with the flat stick. But of late, has been much closer to a tour average player. And if he does his typical thing with the ball striking, that's going to lead to a ton of top 10 and top 15s. The real X factor for Colin is when he gains with the short game, which he doesn't do all the time, right? He's inconsistent. That's why he's right around a neutral player. But at major championships, at these big time WGCs, we saw it at the concession in the past, he tends to ramp up his game. For whatever reason, that's where he tends to gain a lot of his strokes to the field. And if you take a look at his recent form, you can see he's actually starting to, do it with the ball striking like he's used to, gaining close to a stroke per round with the approach play, over 2/3 of a stroke per round with the off the tee play. But the putting and the around the green play is still extremely inconsistent. Now, if you're looking for, a for sure play, first off, you're not going to find that in golf, but you're surely not going to find that at a major championship. stay clear of Collin Morikawa, right? He clearly has to turn around the short game to go out there and have the ceiling performance. But time and time again, he's come into these major championships without much of a semblance of form and completely wowed us, right? And at this point, I'm tired of getting burned by it. This guy is a major championship, just big game type of killer. He's proven that even in this short sample size here at this point. And somebody who at $10,400, I'm going to have in a ton of lineups. Again, he's got the mental capability to take down these things. We've seen that 2 times, even in his short career. He's got the ball striking and off the tee numbers we're looking for, particularly the accuracy off the tee. That's kind of the X factor with Morikawa. He's much more accurate than a lot of these other elite level players up top. The approach play is just as good, if not better, than all the other players in this elite tier range. And like I said, the X factor comes down to the putter. It's kind of similar to a Justin Thomas where, they're going to be right around a neutral putter over the last 24 or 50 measured rounds. It's just whether they bring it to the table this week. And I expect JT to get a ton of attention, particularly after his putting performance at the Byron Nelson. And while I expect that to be a relatively solid play, I'll probably also have some JT exposure. If you're telling me that Morikawa might come in half his owned, whereas in major championships, we've seen time and time again Morikawa come through and JT kind of crumble, right? That's where I start to get intrigued, especially from a game theory perspective. So early in the week, I already know he's going to be one of the lower owned plays up top. So I'm not expecting that to change by Wednesday unless something crazy happens with the ownership here. But at $10,400, certainly somebody I'll be over the field on. Next up, we have Patrick Cantlay as our second man in. He's $9,100 and kind of coming in a little bit, I'd say underrated, maybe not talked about as much as he should, kind of similar to a Collin Morikawa, even though the recent form is just about as good as it can get. So first off, hasn't played in the last 3 events, hasn't played actually since before the Mexico Open, so perhaps that's kind of why people are forgetting about him, but he did win the team event with Xander Schauffele, right, which you can kind of chalk up to it's a team event, so on and so forth, except that he carried that team. He made well more birdies than somebody like a Xander Schauffele, and in the alternate shot event was making 10 to 15 footers for par, was consistently just bailing out that team. So in general, I really attribute that win much more to Patrick Cantlay than I do for a Xander Schauffele. And the week before that, he finished second at the Heritage and 39th at the Masters. So he's coming in with much better form than people are giving him credit for. The shots gained metrics kind of back that up. In every category but the putter, he's gaining significantly, gaining close to half a stroke off the tee, close to half a stroke on approach, a third of a stroke around the green, so extremely well-rounded. And the one thing that we know Cantlay for is that he's an unbelievable putter. I mean, one of the best putters that we've ever seen. Just think of the end of the 2021 season, especially that run through the FedEx Cup playoffs. We've never seen somebody putt that well before. So, at $9,100, I'm more than confident that he's able to turn that around, particularly on one of the biggest stages, because just look at the last 50 measured rounds for him, right? Obviously, a little bit of a larger sample size, but he's getting close to a third of a stroke per round. So, of course, the last 24 have been pretty dreadful for Patrick Cantlay, but just zoom out a little bit more, right, and then you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I love him there at that price tag. I expect him to have a massive week here and perhaps grab his first major championship in his young career. Next up, we have Shane Lowry, who's going to be by far the chalkiest play in the 8K range. I mean, might literally get close to 30% ownership because he checks every single box. And you're not going to be alone in playing him this week. I know I'm sure not going to be alone in playing him this week, and you're pretty much either going to have to be okay with that or completely fade it. And I'm certainly on the side of people that are okay with playing it because, first off, let's look at the form. It kind of speaks for itself here. First off, 13th at the Zurich. That's his worst performance, of course, in the team event there. But 3rd at the Heritage, 3rd at the Masters, 35th at the Match Play, 12th at the Valspar. In fact, if you just take a look at his last 6 PGA Tour events, his last 5 PGA Tour events that were stroke play events, his average finish is 6.6. Just ridiculous stuff from Shane Lowry. So if you're looking for a top 10 finish, he's almost a for sure thing. And at $8,700, he doesn't have to win this event to be optimal, right? A top 10 finish is probably enough at that price tag. The shots gained metrics really speak for themselves. He's gaining across the board, close to half a stroke per round off the tee, close to a stroke per round on approach, gaining around the green and gaining over 3/4 of a stroke per round with the putter. So the shots gained metrics look just as good as the eye test in some of these stroke play events. And if we go back to the last 50 measured rounds, it holds up. So we go down here, take a look at it. Sorry, it should go up here, look at it, still gaining across all 4 categories, significantly on approach and with the putter, the 2 most important categories here. And the real kicker here is, I mean, Shane Lowry is a major championship already, right? He's already has that pressure off his back of his mind. And a lot of times being a first-time champion is a much bigger hurdle to get over than trying to be a champion at another event, right? He's kind of gotten that, weight off his back, and you're able to go out there, play a little bit more freely. So hopefully that plays into Shane Lowry's advantage. He can pull on some of those experiences that he had winning over there at Portrush, perhaps en route to his 2nd major championship. Next up, we're talking about our value play, which is going to be Matt Fitzpatrick at $7,900. I was tempted to go to Louis Oosthuizen. A little bit of worry about injury with a Louis Oosthuizen, whether he's actually going to tee it up this week. So perhaps we'll wait till later in the week to make that type of distinction. But Matt Fitzpatrick at $7,900 is one of the most well-rounded players we have on the PGA Tour, which is perfect for this type of venue. So when you take a look at the shots gained metrics, they really speak for themselves. In fact, his worst category is approach, where he's still gaining 0.2 shots per round, right? Off the tee, close to half a stroke per round, close to half a stroke both on approach, over a third of a stroke per round with the flat stick. Just pretty much no matter where you put this guy, he's going to be a lot better than his peers at getting the job done. And again, at this golf course, you're going to have to be good off the tee with your accuracy. That is something that Matt Fitzpatrick checks emphatically. Approach, he hits a ton of greens regulation, pretty much plays the most boring brand of golf that you'll see. While he's not the most aggressive player, he's not going to shoot 7-8 under par very often. He's the king of going 2 to 3 under. And at a major championship, where we could very well see a single-digit under par winner, perhaps this is where he breaks through, right? This is the exact type of golf course that he'd be hoping for. So somebody who fits the golf course to a T. The recent form for Fitzpatrick, it's been a little bit bumpy, especially of late. Other than the Wells Fargo, where he played extremely well, he missed the cut at the RBC. That was, quote-unquote, his favorite golf course in the world, so that was a little bit surprising to see. But 14th at the Masters, so improving with his major record there. 18th, 5th place at the Valspar. He's certainly trending in the right direction, and much like a Shane Lowry, doesn't need to win this to go out there and actually make the optimal lineup. These 7K guys, you're looking for a top 10 finish, very similar to the guys in the 8K range, and I certainly think Matt Fitzpatrick has more than enough pedigree to get there. Next up, we have Billy Horschel. He's going to be our diamond in the rough at $7,400. And if you've been a fan of the channel, you've been watching some of these videos for quite some time. First off, I'm a Billy Horschel fan, and second off, I think a big just coming out party is coming soon for Horschel. I expect his shots gained metrics, his game to translate very well, very soon into a lot of wins and potentially on the major championship stage. Very similar to a Matt Fitzpatrick. You can see this is a recurring theme with the plays here in this video, is he gains across all 4 categories. He's gaining off the tee, on approach, around the green, and with the putter. And if we zoom out to the last 50 measured rounds, these numbers are only going to improve. So let's go down here, $7,400. He's gaining even more significantly off the tee, even more significantly with the putter. So pretty much whatever window you look at with a Billy Ho, he's gaining in every category that's important to us. But most significantly, he's an extremely strategic player. He does his homework on these golf courses, knows when to lay up off the tee. And in 2007, now it was a very different golf course than it hadn't underdone nearly any of the renovations that it has over the last 5 to 10 years. But at the same time, Tiger Woods went around there with a lot of irons off the tee, was extremely just precise off the tee, putting himself in position. It took advantage of the holes that were somewhat gettable, which, were kind of hard to come by. He ended up shooting a 63, which I didn't see out there at Southern Hills that year. But at the same time, he wasn't aggressive. He wasn't like a John Daly that year that was absolutely bombing it off of every single tee. Billy Horschel is going to play that Tiger Woods brand of golf, right? He's going to kind of plot himself around the golf course, and I like that this week. I'm expecting that to be the best way to have success here. I know there's conflicting reports. People will have their own opinions on the golf course, right? That's what makes all of us different out here as analysts. But I'm expecting more of a well-rounded approach to be the way to go, to think your way around this golf course. I'm expecting it to be a little bit more strategic than most golf courses, just based on setup, based on what I've seen, breaking it down hole by hole. Guys like a Billy Horschel are going to have a lot more success than, let's say, like guys like a Taylor Gooch, for example, or especially a Bubba Watson, who's going to go out there and lash at it with the driver. Sure, you have some big fairways, but you can miss at the wrong part of the fairway and completely block yourself out on these greens. So that's really the strategy factor that comes into it. So with me, Billy Ho, we know he's going to have that factor to him. We know he has that competitive edge, that desire to win. I mean, name a more competitive guy in the PGA Tour. I'm waiting, you won't find one. The only real concern here would be the bent grass putting, where it's by far, I'd say, his worst surface on the PGA Tour. But these are extremely pure greens. I mean, they've been getting ready for this championship for quite some time. And oftentimes when that's the case, when they are as pure as what we're expecting them to be this week, it doesn't matter what surface it is. They all play the same. They're all like glass surfaces. The ball will just glide over them. So hopefully that's the case for Billy Ho this week, and he doesn't get too frustrated by this Oklahoma bent grass. We'll have to see. I think that's the one thing that could hold him back, but I'm certainly expecting him to be able to get over it. And now lastly, the last play I want to talk about here is going to be Alex Noren at $7,000. And frankly, I'm kind of surprised about the price here. A lot of his outright numbers have started to trend towards, the top of the board, deservingly so at this point, but he's top 10 in my modeling and down here at number 53 in pricing. If we take a look at the shots gained metrics, they're unbelievable for an Alex Noren. So first and foremost, down here at 7,000, he's gaining across the board. Again, very consistent with the plays I'm looking at there, gaining off the tee, gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round on approach, over a quarter of a stroke per round off the tee and around the green, and close to half a stroke per round with the putter. Again, very consistent with pretty much every play on the board here. And the thing for Alex Noren, right, is he can get it done in Birdie Fest. We saw that last week with his Sunday emergence out there shooting 8 under par, but he can also get it done under hard conditions. We've seen that over the years. In fact, if you think of Alex Noren, most of you are probably expecting him, us to target him in these difficult conditions. So to see him playing so well of late, I mean, he hadn't played much before last week's event. So it was kind of a big deal for him to have that Sunday performance and crack the top 15 there, because we saw him at the team event. He missed the cut. We can't hold that against him all too much. But the 42nd at the RBC Heritage, right, that wasn't doing all that much for us. It's like, he came back after having that huge run and then finished 42nd, right? But that 12th place finish at the Byron Nelson, that is much more promising to see. If we take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, his stats are still outrageous, still gaining across the board. So pretty much no matter what window we look at is giving us the stats we're looking for. So that gives me a ton of confidence with this play. So at $7,000, I'm going to have him in a ton of lineups. And on the flip side, the opposite of a Billy Horschel, his stats on bent grass are advantageous, right? He plays better on bent grass than he has over his last 50 measured rounds. So somebody who at $7,000, I maybe like even more than a Billy Horschel on this slate. But I expect him to be a little bit popular, right? The one difference there is that Noren's going to be maybe 10, 15% owned. Hopefully people aren't that sharp this week. He doesn't end up getting close to 15% owned. We'll have to see. Whereas Billy Horschel could be single digit, right? 5, maybe even 8 to 9% owned at very most. So we'll have to see with that. But either way, going to absolutely love both of them in my player pool. That's all I've got for the DFS core picks. Before you hop on out of here, first off, go ahead and smash the like button, but also go ahead and let me know who you've got winning down in the comments. As per usual, going to have even more content coming for you. So a value picks video dropping later on tonight. Also fades and sleepers, our weekly DFS live stream. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you go ahead and do so you don't miss any of that when it drops. Best of luck with all of your lineups. Again, make sure you comment down below who you've got winning this tournament, and I'll see you guys next time.